Jeune chasseur, parfois pêcheur à 16 heures. Il aimait beaucoup le rhum, mais n'était pas encore homme. Un jour allait au marché et rencontra une Zoé. Bien souvent il la voyait, mais ne l'avait courtisée. Mais gardait ça en secret. Zoé le faisait tourner, elle savait qu'elle lui plaisait.
Welcome, I'm your host, Mary McEwen for Find Your Family Free. Today we're going to start a special two-part episode on Ireland. First, we're going to visit with my friend Gretchen Rabbit Metz, who made all this possible. Let's go to the interview. We are beginning our journey back to Ireland today with an interview with Gretchen Rabbit Metz, the person who made this all possible and a dear friend. Gretchen, welcome to my home today. Can you tell me how you began your Irish research?
Well, it all started because my sister, my older sister, Laura Lee, informed me that if we could prove where our grandfather, who immigrated to this country in the very late 19th century, where he came from in Ireland, proved that he was an Irish citizen before he came over here, then we could get our Irish passports. And that began a very long journey.
Why did you want an Irish passport?
Oh, just for me, it was just for the fun of it. My sister wanted one because she did a lot more traveling, and she wanted to use an Irish passport in some of the places where she was going.
Why?
Because Irish citizens are more appreciated in some places of the world than United States citizens.
Ah, you could have knocked me out with a feather. I never knew. First, let's learn a little bit about you. Tell me about your education, your background, because you're a very interesting person.
Oh, well, thank you. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and my father is the one who has the Irish background that we use to prove and get our Irish passports, although I found out with my genealogy work that my mother also has a lot of Irish in her background.
That explains a lot.
Yes, it certainly does. My husband would testify to that. And then I attended school in Seattle, and I attended the University of Washington, and I got both my bachelor's degree in history and my master's degree in special education from the University of Washington. And I taught in Seattle, and I also taught in Renton, Washington, and
what groups of students did you teach?
I've taught everything from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I've taught both regular education, special education, and gifted education.
So you're very well-rounded, but I heard the word history in there. You've
Yes.
always been interested in history then.
Yeah, it kind of runs in the family. My brother, myself, my son, and now my grandson, we are all aficionados of history.
Of history.
Yes.
When did you first learn you were Irish? Or how did you know that you were Irish?
Well, I always knew I was because somewhere along the lines, it came through, I think mostly from my father. He would sing Irish, traditional ballads, and he would tell some of the stories, and he sometimes would put on a brogue, even though he didn't really have one, just for fun. And
did your grandfather have a brogue?
I never knew my grandfather,
he
because my grandfather died in 1918,
Oh.
leaving his wife and the 3 little boys.
Oh, we have a picture of that,
Yeah,
don't we?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, when you started your Irish research, how did you start, since it was a long time ago, for your passport, for instance?
Well, first of all, I found out what I had to, what all the requirements were to get my passport. And then I began the research, and this was way before we had the ease of use of the internet. This was way back when my husband and I were one among the first to be MSN.com users, and I did a lot of research in the library. And
when you say the library, what library do you mean?
The libraries wherever I happened to be at that
Oh,
time.
so you traveled around looking for your family?
Well, actually, yes, I did, because I went up to Butte, Montana, which is where my father was born and where my grandfather had his business, and my grandfather and grandmother and their family all lived. And Butte, Montana's library is fantastic because they had so many Irish that came over to work.
Now that's
in
really
mines.
interesting for our viewers. Don't forget Butte, Montana.
Yeah, because they had, and a lot of them were from Galway.
Oh,
and
really?
that's where my grandfather was from. So they had shelves of books, including a marvelous book. It was like a I think it was a 3-volume book that went into the going way back, like 1,000 years, in the clans and which surnames belonged to which clans, and it was just absolutely fascinating, that wealth of material.
Well, talking about names, could you tell us a little history on the name Rabbit, what it means in Gaelic, and your story about your father told, because that's a delightful story. So let's have this.
Okay, well, my father was he loved to tell stories, and he was a great storyteller. And whenever someone would ask him, what was his nationality, what was the origin of his surname, because, it's not too many rabbits running around.
Well, not with people rabbits.
Yeah, people rabbits. And he would always get this twinkle in his eye, and he would say, well, I'm Irish. And when the English invaded Ireland, they forced all the Irish who, because we all spoke Gaelic back then, to change their surnames from the Gaelic to an English equivalent. And so, of course, whomever had asked the questions would always say, well, what was your surname in Gaelic? And my father would look at them with a big smile and say, O'Hare.
That's funny.
But actually, what it is, it's really Coneen. And
would you say that one more time?
Coneen.
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 Yeah,
okay.
and there's two basic, how should I say, clans, and one of them is in Galway, and was part of the subgroup of the Kenyan clan, and the other one was up in what is now Northern Ireland. That was the other branch of the Rabbit family.
But your O'Hares were down in Galway.
Yeah, the O'Hares.
I've heard rumors. Is it true you have an uncle, Jack Rabbit?
I sure do. His real name was John, but of course, just like Jack Kennedy, my uncle was called Jack all his life.
Well, did anybody kid him about being Jack Rabbit?
Oh, I'm sure they did, because when I was downloaded and found his obituary, because he was had quite an important job with the U.S. Geological Service, because he was a geologist and he had graduated from Harvard with his PhD in geology, and the obituary talked about that, his nickname, and that he was Jack Rabbit. But it was interesting, too, to find out that he actually had discovered a mineral, and it's named after him, and it's called rabbitite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Now, your father was in the Washington State Legislature, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a senator.
So,
back in the war years.
Might I say Blarney runs in the Rabbit family?
Oh yeah, very definitely, yeah. And his oldest brother, who
this is not Jack Rabbit.
No, this is James Francis, who went by Frank. He actually was quite a writer and wrote several books.
Well, what an amazing family you have. Let's talk about you and your sister, Laurelie.
Okay.
Now, you're letting us use a picture of you in the Scottish Highlands with Laura Lee?
No, I couldn't find it, unfortunately.
Oh, shucky darn.
It's somewhere, but I have no idea.
Well, we'll do it in our mind.
Okay, okay.
Tell us a little bit about Laura Lee. She's quite an interesting person, too.
Oh, Laura Lee has literally traveled the world, and she's, even after her marriage, she and her husband separated, and she went her way and he went his way. She still continued to travel. So besides being in not South Africa, but Kenya, right after the revolution when they had won their independence, and her husband was teaching the Kenyans how to set up and operate and maintain a television station.
How interesting.
And so my sister was over there with their three boys. And then after that, they went to Italy, and so she lived in Italy, and then she came back to the States, and then she went back. She lived for a time in Wales, and
didn't you say she did musical comedy and things?
Yes, pretty much all her adult life she's
sort of like your father as the senator on stage, huh?
Oh yeah, she's very talented, and she has a lovely singing voice. And speaking of my father, my grandmother, his mother, taught all her boys how to play the piano because she was a very gifted concert pianist. And so my father, when he sang, he often played the piano.
So he accompanied himself.
So, yeah, and I think the musical talent
runs
one that
strong
runs
in the
families,
family.
Yeah.
Now, why did Laura Lee end up in Ireland?
She wanted to go there because she had her passport, and
just like your Irish passport. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and she wanted, and she had been so used to living overseas. I think that was one of the reasons. And if you ever go there and spend some time, as you have done, Mary, you know how warm and how lovely the Irish people are.
Oh, they are.
And she just felt that it
was home.
Yeah.
Now, she has a home in Skibbereen, Ireland.
Yes.
What about this group of friends that we're going to see? Don't they do things together?
Yes, they do. And
what are some of the things they do?
Well, let's see.
You said they exercise.
Well, yes.
That isn't typically Irish, but
but this group, when she first got there, there was a women's group that was meeting, so she joined that, and she made a lot of friends through that, and then that has branched out, and she's made friends with people doing other things, and she's in a group that plays cards every week, and then she's in a group that just get together for tea and what is the Irish word for when you get together?
Crack?
Yeah, have a good crack.
And not drugs.
No. It's conversation,
yes.
Which we all love to do. And
you would have fooled me.
Yeah. And then there's another group that are getting together to put on some kind of a performance for commemoration of the founding of the state of Ireland.
Oh.
And I mean, there's so many things I can't keep up with them all.
Well, now you've been Skyping back and forth your sister
Yes.
quite frequently.
Yes.
And this is how we came up with the idea, and I'm so grateful because if we hadn't had you, we wouldn't have had this little door into Ireland. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But now I would like to ask you to please tell our viewers what you found on the internet when you went on looking for family that you didn't know, because this is a really interesting story.
Okay, well,
Now you didn't pay to do this, did you?
No.
No. Okay.
When I first started my search, all I had was that my grandfather was born in Ireland. That is really, and his name. And that was it. And so I started really from scratch. I didn't know when he was born.
But it's possible to do that, and you started a long time ago, yeah.
And I didn't know when he died. I knew that, my grandmother, and I knew her name, and I knew when actually I didn't even know when she had died, except that it was sometime after I was born, and I was.
Because they were so much older than you, yeah.
Well, yeah, and my mother, they weren't close because my grandmother at that point in time was living in New England. Anyway, to make a long story short, I discovered first cousins, that my sister and I and the family, we thought they might be still alive, but we didn't know. We didn't know where
Let's
they
just
were
stop
living.
here a minute. How did you feel when, after all these years, you actually found these people by using the internet? How did you feel about that?
Oh, I was so excited. I was so excited.
What about the people at the other end? Did
They were too, and as a result, my first cousin and her only daughter flew up from Texas so that we could all meet. And she stayed at my house, she and her daughter.
Well, a lot of people think, oh, the internet, my people won't be on there. But you just typed in their names, didn't you? Pretty much?
No.
Oh, you
no,
didn't?
What I did is I went on to Roots Web. You remember
Oh,
the
okay.
one?
Roots Web is really
Yes.
good.
And I put in queries about my grandfather.
And they're still doing this.
Oh yeah, I'm still doing it with some of the
I've seen you, yes.
genealogy that I'm still working on. And then her daughter, because my first cousin Anne is not at all fluent with using the internet, but her daughter saw it.
Oh, there's
and
always
her
somebody,
daughter
yeah.
got in touch, and from there I got to know my first cousin.
So you would certainly encourage people to do this.
Oh heavens, yeah.
Let me ask you one last question. How is finding your Irish heritage, both in person, because you've traveled to Ireland 4 times, haven't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
And on the internet and other methods, how has it affected your life to know who your Irish people are?
It's very enriching, and I felt at home the minute that I first stepped in the soil of Ireland. It was like I was home.
I had the same experience,
Yeah.
and I think many of our viewers
Yeah.
would too. There's something really special and so welcoming about the people.
Yeah, and it's when you tell wherever you go in Ireland that you're doing genealogy work, and the first thing comes out of their mouth is, well, what's the surname? And when I say Rabbit, they say, oh, that's a Galway name. Because they know their clans. It is such a small country, and it has had so much trauma that the people very much are still very caring and involved with each other and care about each one of them.
So it's only a Skype phone call away, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Now we're going to watch a video provided by Mary O'Donovan of the Skibbereen Chamber of Commerce, filmed by Greg Mulcahy of Vale Media, about the wonderful vacation spot, Skibbereen, Ireland. Let's go.
Oh, Father dear, I oft times hear you talk of Erin's Isle, her lofty scenes and valleys green, her mountains rude and wild. They say it is a pretty place wherein a prince might dwell. Oh, why did you abandon it? The reason to me tell.
I think it's just a classic Irish market town. It's friendly, it's old-fashioned in the best sense of the word. Quite a number of the shops are throwbacks and they're interesting places, helpful people, and that's the thing that strikes me most.
Skib is a great place to grow up. It's got wonderful people, there's lots of characters, lots to do, and it's really, really beautiful. The surrounding, I mean, West Cork is one of the most beautiful places in Ireland in my opinion, and it's a really great place to go.
I've no problems with bringing Kate up in the community. I love it down here. I love the people. Everybody knows people. Everybody talks to people, and they're not afraid to talk to each other.
Very warm, very welcome. I suppose the fact that I'm living here now for 37 years is an indication of why I have stayed here.
Very friendly. That's one of my big joys and the big thing I miss when I go away back to the UK to visit.
I think it's got a really good kind of community spirit to it. Like, for example, when the floods happened there a couple of years ago, there was like, you know, all the fire brigade, the services, all the people just really got involved. So that's nice to see. There's lots of feeling in it, and people care about each other, which is nice.
Class.
I describe it as a very close community, a very diverse and cosmopolitan community in the wider area.
It's a vibrant town. For me, it's the town I grew up in. It's the town I want to grow old in. And I hope that it's a town that's going to progress into the future and be sustainable for all the younger generations coming up. Dan? Always Dan? It has a lot of character and characters in it as you meet them in the shops and that. Nothing is that urgent, but things do get done. It seems to work at a slightly different pace maybe to what city people are used to. But for all that, it is efficient in its own way.
It had a heart of Ireland.
Community, active, busy, and family orientated.
Welcoming and facilitating.
Now we're going to use Skype to go to Skibbereen, Ireland, to Gretchen's sister's house, Laura Lee, and talk to some of her friends. Good afternoon, Gerald.
Good afternoon. I'm back again. I'm a week older.
Thank you. And what position have you held in your town during your working life?
I was a clerk in the local post office all my life and a manager for the last few years. I retired in 1999.
So you know a lot of town history from just being in the post office.
Well, I'm growing up here. I was 11 years away, but the rest of my life has been lived here in Skibbereen.
Well, you had some very fascinating information that you shared last time we talked, and I'd like to go over it again. Could you tell us the brief history of Skibbereen? You said it was a young town. How young is that in Ireland?
It's about 450 years in existence as a town. And that would be certainly, by average, quite recent by Skibbereen, because we are a country of small towns and most of them are very old.
Could you tell us about where it's located? It's in West Cork, isn't it?
It's in southwest County Cork, almost on the coast, but not quite. You do not see the sea from it, but the Island River is tidal and connects it with the sea. If you want a day by the seaside, you have to travel to the coast at small distances.
Now, you said there was a town named Baltimore?
There is, and still is, a thriving town. Mostly for sailing and weekend homes and holiday homes. Some people might think it's overbuilt, and it also has a restored castle.
What's the name of the castle?
Baltimore Castle.
Oh, Baltimore, okay.
In Irish, Duna Shade, but don't worry about that. It's Baltimore Castle.
Now,
It's popularly known as.
You told me last time that we spoke that Skibbereen was protected because of where it was, pretty much, from the coastal raiders and things?
You could draw a comparison, if you like, with Bantry, which is 17 miles away, and that is on the sea, opposite Bantry Bay. But we are not. We are 7 or 8 miles upstream inland from the coast.
So you didn't have a lot of Viking raiders and things?
There was one dramatic raid in 1631 on Baltimore.
What happened?
But it would have been impossible to carry out that against Skibbereen because they abducted 100 people, and you couldn't do that in a town as inland as Skibbereen.
Oh, they had to have access to get them on their ships and things.
They would have to be on the coast, yes, to effect such a raid.
Now, at that time, what was, Skibbereen was agricultural then, or?
In the 17th century,
Yes.
well, it would have been in its infancy then. It was surrounded by a Gaelic culture and an agricultural economy. And many people imagine, rightly or wrongly, that the town began where two waterways converged, namely the River Island and the Cale, C-A-O-L, the Cale stream. And the feeling is that they were trading animals at that point because the easiest way to move anything before the machine age was, of course, by water.
So that was a great advantage then.
It facilitated trading, and as I told you last week, there were 3 castles surrounding the Island Valley in which Skibbereen sits.
And could you tell our audience the names of the castles and who they belong to?
Again, there was Letter Tinlish Castle, there was Gortnaclohi Castle, and there was Curra. C-U-R-R-A-G-H, Curra. They were the 3 castles, all held by the McCarthy family, a powerful family in the Gaelic order.
Now, are there still McCarthys around in Skibbereen?
Many McCarthys.
And they still own the castles?
No, not at all. The 3 castles have long disappeared.
Oh, they're not there at all then?
Well, the last of them that I remember a remnant of was Gortnaclohi Castle. And the one in Letter Tinlish disappeared. They were mostly destroyed by the Cromwellian invasion. That's what damaged all the castles in Ireland. Some of them have survived, and more of them naturally fell away. And in latter days then, they would have been deconstructed for the new thing called health and safety. They presented a threat to visitors. So that, fortunately, there are quite a large number of them still standing, but the 3 in Skibbereen have disappeared.
I would like to tell you a little personal story about Cromwell. My husband and I used to have an Irish-Scottish gift store, and we made a product that had Oliver Cromwell's face on it, was to put in the bottom of your bird cage. And those sold quite well.
Your birthday cake. It wasn't a celebratory move when he came to Ireland. No.
He was in a cranky mood, that's for sure. What is Skibbereen like today?
It's an up-to-date modern tourist town, mostly operating education, professional services of the first quality, tourism facilities, a new art centre and a new electronic hub known as the Ludgate Centre. That is still to open. So it's a strange mixture of the old and the middle and the modern.
What was it like when you were a boy?
When I was born in 1935, and many people I tell that to remind me it was the year of Abyssinia.
Oh.
Some trouble, but I think Mussolini invaded Abyssinia.
It didn't have anything to do with you, though.
But anyway, that's the only connection I ever had with Benito Mussolini.
That's very fortunate.
Yes, yes. So, I was born in 1935, a very, very hard time in Ireland, the 1930s, because the Great Depression, of course, was on globally, and to compound and exacerbate it, we were engaged in an economic war with our nearest neighbour, Great Britain.
Yes.
What were they trying to do? I mean...
the main thing was, it was the withholding of land rents or annuities, because there was a dispute about the ownership of Ireland going back hundreds of years. And we gained independence, as you know, in 1921. So, for the mid-1930s, there was a penal duty imposed on live cattle going from Ireland to England, which drastically depressed the prices accruing to farmers here. So there was a great, great crisis. And they finally made an agreement with the British in 1938 with such penal duties to be lifted again.
Now, you were very young at that time. What do you remember
Yes.
about in your boyhood time going to school? How were your schools then as compared to now?
Well, I went to a grade school, you call it there, a national school, we got it here, on Market Street, Skibbereen. I just went into it every day, short distance from where I lived.
Were they small classes or large?
They would be maybe 25.
So a nice size.
A good class, yes, it'd be a good class. And eventually they had to replace that school in the 1970s because the number of pupils offering rose. We had a sort of economic boom in the 60s certainly, and in the 70s as well. And it's now converted into an old people's home, so there's a good chance I might turn full circle. If I studied at 5, I might go back there at 95, if I last that long. Most buildings around the town that I knew as a boy are still standing. And the main growth of Skibbereen has been suburban. There was a boom in suburban housing starting from the 60s. And when I was a boy, it was quite normal for a large retail trader in the heart of town to live over his shop. They had elegant houses of 2 to 3 floors over the shop, but in later times, those people moved out to the suburbs and motored in and out every day to their business. That is a global trend that hit Skibbereen as it did everywhere.
Now, you told me that you were a clerk at the post office, and all the Irish movies,
yes.
and all the Irish movies I see, that is where you learn everything about the people in the town. Were you part of that? Did you inform people from postcards and such things, or what mail they were getting?
You would meet everybody in a post office for the reason that they maintained a monopoly of that particular service. They wouldn't tolerate any competition, the post office. So it was the only one in town, so sooner or later, one did meet everybody.
Did they ask you a question about who was getting mail from whom?
No, well, they would.
Well, yes.
we would have to be very circumspect about what we tell people from inside the post office counter. And everybody's business was protected. You wouldn't discuss another customer, you know. But you meet every type coming and going to the post office. Not so much now because the electronics have replaced social letter writing.
That's true, unfortunately.
They have, you see. The only bit of social letter writing that is seemingly surviving would be birthday cards, Christmas cards, and quite a bit foreign tourists like to send postcards from here to show they were here.
Well, we've looked on the internet and it's a beautiful town. Now,
Yes.
if I were going to ask you, why should I come to Skibbereen, what would you tell me as a tourist? What would be really wonderful to see?
The which? Oh yes, the Saturday market, my friend here says, the Saturday market is quite a mecca for a lot of different types of people who gather there to buy fresh food of the highest quality.
Sounds wonderful. Do you shop there yourself?
Not so much, because I know everybody and I will expect you to make a purchase at every stall.
So you're fair, you don't shop with any of them, yeah. That's very nice of you. Is there any more about the history of Skibbereen you'd want to tell me, or your family history for that matter?
Well, my family doesn't have a history insofar as I'm from ordinary people. They were mostly farmers, and some of them moved into town, and later they moved away. I would be a typical person near the town, and of course I went to the town school, which meant because of my proximity to the town, I was looked upon as a countryman in the town and as a town man in the country.
A man without a country, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I was kind of a mixture of both that way, you know.
So how has Ireland changed in the political and religious climate from when you were a boy?
Radically. The culture has changed radically, certainly. First of all, real incomes have gone up massively if compared to the 1940s and the 50s too. Universal ownership of motor cars, foreign holidays, all those things were inaccessible when I was a boy, except to the very few. And even those who had plenty of money couldn't travel because of war.
So you'd say in general things are much better today?
Oh, absolutely. And we've had an expanded welfare state as well. Medical services and legal are not without the reach of anybody now because of state funds into them.
Do you see that as an improvement?
Well, it certainly is. And when I was a boy, there were several young people who couldn't wear shoes. But everybody, I haven't seen a barefoot person in the last 50 years around.
Unless they're tourists, huh?
No, yeah, except on the beach or something like that, yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Something about asking.
Well, it's...
Okay. How about your family? How about your family? Do you have children?
Famine.
Oh, the family.
No, I never married.
I'm
a bachelor, an unmarried bachelor, yeah.
Well, you sound like you're still a catch. It's not too late.
Well,
what about the famine? Could you tell us a little history about the famine in Skibbereen?
The famine. The greatest disaster in the history of this town was the famine from 1845 to 1848. The population halved from approximately 4,400 to 2,200. And it remained static ever since at that figure, at the lower figure. There you go. It mostly hit the poor due to lack of hygiene and nutrition. Nationally, about 1 million died and another 1 million emigrated.
So that was really something in your town, yes, my word.
It was shocking really, because it was due to many things, but the dependence on the potato was a staple crop.
And it failed, didn't it? Yeah.
It failed due to a blight. I forget the name of the condition. It failed due to a blight 3 seasons in a row.
And so they had very little to eat.
Nothing in the case of the very poor. No.
Well, I'm glad that it's a wonderful place to be now and that you have such a beautiful town. It's so pretty. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Well, as I say now, there's one small thing. You see, most Irish towns have a mixture in their name of English and Irish, but no scholars can ever agree on the etymology of the word Skibbereen.
What are some of the theories or the ideas?
It's disputed. And there was an attempt to change the name of the town in the 1870s, but it didn't get very far. So perhaps it's an interesting aspect of it that they cannot agree as to the origins of the word Skibbereen. It certainly is Irish, and the ending in EEN would suggest something small.
Now, is the Gaelic spoken there now?
The English writer James Makepeace Thackeray visited here in 1843.
Oh, he did?
He wrote a nice book. He visited Skibbereen, and he wrote a nice sketchbook, but he headed his article "The City of Skibbereen,"
which wasn't correct.
The city, it was and it wasn't. As you know, the term city has a wide application. But he used it anyway, the city of Skibbereen, but the Een would suggest it to be a small city.
Well, that's very interesting. Is there any more things you want to tell us about the history of Skibbereen?
As I say, it's a town still, unfortunately, losing most of its young people, because you see, it's not expanding sufficiently to absorb the young people coming onto the labour market.
So they're going to Dublin and Cork and things then?
They are going to the cities in Ireland and abroad if they can't do well there. They leave the country still. And the rise in education in recent years, in some cases, has accelerated that because they cannot find an occupation commensurate to their talents and qualifications here. You have a new type of emigration now. The highly qualified are leaving on a scale which wasn't the case before.
That's very interesting. But you being particularly a tourist town, that shouldn't affect you that much, should it, economically?
Yes, but the trouble with tourism is it does not give a 12-month-a-year job. It's 3 months a year. It's high.
Well, that's
the problem, yes.
Well, thank you so much for your interview and all the knowledge you have. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your family.
I had 5 children. I lost the second one to breast cancer 2 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I have 13 grandchildren.
Could you tell me when you what you did when you taught the travelers and where you were?
I was on the east side of Cork City, in the city, and they came in as they were actually paid to come because they had dropped out of school and they were 16 plus. And so this was to help them get back into work or just to keep them interested and keeping on. So we did art, we made things, we painted, we did all sorts of things, tapestry, carpet, and anything at all that would interest them. But they were quite good at art, I have to say. They were quite talented, most of them. And so it's joy, really, to do.
Could you please tell for our viewers that don't know what the travelers are, could you explain a little bit about their culture? And
That they used to be called itinerants, but they don't like that name. So they're called travelers here now. They've recently got ethnic status, so they're an ethnic minority. And they traveled from, in the old days, in the 50s, early 60s, they used to travel from farm to farm and repair things. And they made buckets and things like that. But as life moved on and it's no longer viable, and but they still try, that they live in houses, some of them, or they live in halting sites altogether, in caravans and camper vans, and they still travel when they can. But it's not the same as it used to be, where they actually got money for repairing things.
Now, how many travelers did you have at any one time? A large group or a small group? Or?
There were various groups. Altogether, there would have been maybe 50 of them, but they were broken. Yeah, they were broken up into different classes, and we had, in the afternoons, we'd have married women who came and I taught them how to sew on machine.
Was this their choice to be broken up from the men, or were there just not any men interested?
Well, yeah, no, because they had English and maths as well, and cookery lessons, so some would do that and some would do something else, and then it would rotate.
Now, you said that they were quite good at art. Did they have any subject matter that they did more than others, like outdoor scenes or?
Portraits. They like painting the pop stuff. And I had one girl who continually drew cannabis weed.
That's interesting.
You can play on her mind a bit.
Are you still in touch with any of them, or probably not?
Not now, no. Once I moved down to Skibbereen, it's a long way, and so no, I've lost touch with them.
Now, were you born?
When I still lived in the city, I did.
Were you born in Skibbereen?
No, I was born in London.
And how did you get to Skibbereen?
Well, I married an Irishman.
Good start.
And I moved to Dublin, and from Dublin to Cork, and that's when I started work there. So when that ended, when I retired, I moved west.
Were you a teacher before working with the travelers?
No, I was a welfare officer in a primary school. Where I kept all the records for health stuff, and I used to do research for teachers.
Well, that's very interesting.
So I wouldn't call it a teacher as such. It was more of a tutor, really.
A tutor. Well, that's very interesting. What are your current things that you occupy yourself with? What do you like to do?
I read and I watch television and I visit people.
Laura Lee says she's saying something in the background. What did she say?
What did you say?
You do jigsaw puzzles?
Oh, I do jigsaw puzzles,
and
yes.
you knit.
And I knit.
You are a very versatile person.
Yeah, and she's a fabulous gardener as well.
And I have a friend who has a model railway, and I made lots and lots of buildings for it.
Oh, that's wonderful. My husband makes accessories for model railroads. We'll have to send you his site. And he has a lot of buildings you can make.
That's great.
And well, is there anything you'd like to tell us about yourself or your point of view or anything?
No, you better ask Laura Lee to talk about me.
Is it okay if we talk about you when you're gone?
That's quite all right if you talk about me when I'm gone.
Well, not permanently. I mean today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the interviews. Join us for episode 2, where we'll continue to talk with Laura Lee's friends, and then I will show you how you can find your family free. Until next time, may you be blessed.
She has taken to the sun for a dicey rising. She will never give it up. It's up each morning, she will hop and goes in for another little drop. At the heart of the room is Dicey Riley. She walked along the Gibbon Street with an independent air, and then it's down to Summer Hill where the people at her stare. She says it's nearly 1:30 and time I'm waiting for another one. At the heart of the blue is Dicey Riley. She owns